rock structure. Let's first talk about that all have knowledge. What I want to point out and emphasize point, this is not some throwaway line. Paul is not being a dramatic lawyer here and saying this ironically. We have a tendency, when we're disagreeing with another person, to dismiss their knowledge. How many times have we heard ourselves say, oh, they just don't get it? Or we're talking to someone, they say something over there. You know, oh, they don't have a clue. Or we're discussing someone, we're talking with them. They don't know. They don't understand. Sometimes we find yourself. Paul is telling us right here, chapter 8, verse 1, that the person that we disagree with, that we may not like what they think, we may not like the conclusion, they do have knowledge. They too are important. Even if I don't agree with them, even if I think, how could you have come to that idea? They do have knowledge. And we know we all have knowledge. Now, that very next phrase talks about love, about knowledge pumping up and love building up. When you said love building up, what that means in a little history in Corinth, and I want to make this emphasis first. I'm going to come back to it towards the end of the sentence here. So the idea that other people have knowledge too. Even if you don't agree with it, even if you don't like it, they have knowledge too. They too are made in the image of God. They too have a spirit that can be drawn and called by the Almighty. They too have knowledge. Keep that in mind when you're talking about the gospel with others, that they too have knowledge. Let's talk a little bit about this whole thing of what do you mean by edify. Edifice. What does it mean by building? I'm going to drop a little bit into Corinth. If I just quickly drop back a couple of chapters, 1 Corinthians chapter 4, Paul, again, not being ironic, he's not making this with sarcasm or, I think our English phrase for it is tongue in cheek. He means what he says, you are already full, you are already rich, you have reigned as kings without it, indeed I wish you did reign, because then we might reign with you. Corinth was a wealthy, cosmopolitan city in the ancient world. For centuries, longer than this country has been a country, from 700 BC to right at 146 BC, that's when the city was destroyed, Corinth was a wealthy trade center. It had two ports, one to the east and one to the west. I will point here. We have one to the east. This is what led. We have going to the east. This is what leads over to Egypt and what we did at the time was called Asia. On the west is what leads over to Italy, into Greece. Corinth was a trade town. The ships, instead of going across the Mediterranean Sea, would come to Corinth, take the goods across from one port to the other port, and keep sailing. A wealthy merchant town. Pottery was a major export from Corinth. This is called the Corinthian style pottery. For us today, we don't pottery. Well, how many of you have containers and boxes? And in the ancient world, you didn't have cardboard. You didn't have what is the metal racking that you put in the faucet? Faucet or something. We take the metal, we pull it plastic to be organized. We didn't have that in ancient world. We had pottery. So pottery made in Corinth was a major source of their wealth. One of the other things that we know from this historical period is things made in Corinth, this town, will be made specifically to be ornate and ostentatious. The Corinthian column, as it was known, would have a crown on the top, and then sometimes those extra flourishes were not necessary for holding weight. They were there simply to say they made in Corinth. The more common style happens to be called the Ionian column, which is the straight column up and down. The things that were made in Corinth were made to show off the extra wealth that existed there. So when Paul makes this reference, 1 Corinthians 8:1, that knowledge style was often more than what was needed for just the building. So now Paul will make this contrast from love, from a knowledge being more pumped up to now love is what the actual building needs to have. So we keep going down to love edifies, love building. Paul developed this theme of love being a building, a foundation. Look at all this later chapters in Corinthians, where our conversation, our action, our motivation are to be built not on knowledge, but on love. Many of you are familiar with 1 Corinthians chapter 13. If you look just in the middle of that chapter, 6 and 7, love does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. Love is not, if I step out from love doesn't get happy when you catch somebody lying. Aha, I got you. I proved you wrong. That's not love. Love rejoices when the person is right. You finally came to the truth. Excellent. Not aha, I got you wrong. Love does not rejoice in iniquity, it rejoices in the truth. It bears all things. Again, from what Paul said earlier, this is a engineering term. It bears things. This is a construction idea. This is not that orientation at the top that makes it fluffy. This is what you support underneath. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things. What's the next one? Endures. The idea of construction again. If we build a house and it doesn't endure for more than a year, what do we say about the construction? Shoddy work, it was bad. I appreciate you guys being very charitable with your words. There are other things we talk about that construction job goes badly. But love is supposed to endure. So when Paul making this contrast with love and knowledge, what he's talking about is something that we can build on as a foundation. Only the love of God is a sufficient foundation for us. So that's the first thing that we should all know. We should all know that God's love comes first. Now, Paul can take a little bit to talk about knowledge more. So let's jump to the next. If he uses this phrase in the next verse about knowing nothing, let's keep this apart a little bit. Where is he going with it? 1 Corinthians 8, 2 and 3. If anyone thinks he knows anything, he knows nothing. And aside from being some sort of weak statement, what does it say? If anyone thinks he knows anything, he knows nothing. It could be something dismissive of, oh, your kids don't know nothing. But this seems a little odd because it said in the previous verse that we all know. Paul just talked about stuff we know, and now he says that if anyone thinks he knows anything, he knows nothing. There could be wisdom, humanity versus God wisdom going on. So we did that first part, taking what Paul said, or our Paul said, not Paul, okay. It is very nice to Paul in the scripture. The emphasis on what God knows. The emphasis is not on what he knows. Well, we know it's important. I'm not putting that aside for right now. But the emphasis is what God knows. Sometimes in our desire to motivate each other, we will ask questions. What do you know about God? How much do you want God? These are questions we'll ask each other to try to inspire us to do more things with our Lord. But by God, yes, our salvation is not depending on us knowing the right questions or having the right answer. Instead of a question, and this is what we're doing to each other, we're trying to ask each other clever questions. You're trying to manage someone, trying to get someone to do something. So instead of being, you will do it my way because I said so, we'll ask it as a question. Don't you think it'd be a good idea if? And you're doing the right. We're not really asking a question. We want to do this. We'll ask questions. Hey, have you seen this? And then you describe it. Where the idea is, we'll ask questions. And the whole thing about asking questions is often tied to human needs. But note here, instead of a question, God is going to give a statement. But if anyone loves God, this one is known by him. Your and my salvation is not tied to I have to know the right question, or you know the right question. It is tied to the statement we are known by God. There's a phrase in this verse I want to jump on. Immediately wraps up the whole connection to what about my knowledge, God's knowledge, love. The phrase in here, yet as he ought to know. In Hebrew, in Greek, this is actually one word. Would you say on that slide for this special? Sorry, actually, I love that special. So, and if anyone thinks he knows anything, he knows, because in English it sounds like he knows nothing. Okay, you know, it's like, that doesn't make sense. Our God talks about my people perish for lack of knowledge. When we read, for those of you who just listened to the Bible study in Deuteronomy, how many times was it, teach your children, teach yourselves, every year assemble and learn what God has said. So the idea that we know nothing is not consistent with who God is or how God treats us. The phrase in Greek here, he knows nothing yet, is actually one word. Now it is the Father. The word is actually gnosko in Greek. We can translate it exactly as it's translated in 1 Corinthians. Knowing nothing yet. We can also translate it as come to know. The word gnosko is a transition verb. We would say it in English, I'm beginning to get the idea. I have some knowledge and I'm gaining knowledge. I'm at a certain point and moving. Gnosko is not, I already have my degree and I'm already confident. Gnosko is, I'm starting and moving. And you don't use the phrase, I'm getting there. So what Paul's talking about here, if anyone thinks he knows anything, he's getting there. Not that you know nothing, you're moving with this knowledge. That whole phrase, just to put that word in, yes. It's really a statement of hope. But the knowledge you currently have about who God is, you have some. Remember what Paul said back in verse 1, we all have knowledge. Paul then not turning around in verse 2 saying you know nothing. You don't know anything. It's not what he said. You all have knowledge, and it still has room to grow. That word, yes, in English is trying to convey that idea. You're starting, you have some knowledge about God, and it's going to be better. You know some things about the Almighty Lord right now, Paul's writing in the church in Corinth, but there's more coming. Those of you who have studied Corinthians, you know that church is very focused on the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And Paul tells them, you got some gifts now, you got some good ones, but there's even more. Paul tells them, you already have knowledge of God. Then when he gets to 1 Corinthians 13, he says, I'm going to tell you about a better way. So this verse in 1 Corinthians 8 really should be a statement of hope for us. It should be a statement of what our salvation really wrapped up in. You have a foundation. Talk about that foundation building. God is your foundation. Love of God first. And this is something. Now, foundations are interesting. I don't know how many of you have seen foundations by themselves. You may have seen over the years. They are interesting. And sometimes they'll have some of the piping already in the foundation. Sometimes you'll have to drill it after. Foundations are fascinating all on their own. But generally don't stop with the foundation. There's more to come. There's a depth. There's a to be continued. So anything to walk away from today, I really want you to stay in your head that we don't know yet what we ought to know. There's more coming. I would appeal to those who are here today and those that are watching. What is your knowledge about God? What do you already know about it? And whatever that is, God has more for you. If you know He is saved, there's a yes, there's more to come. Now Paul comes back after giving this amazing statement. You all acknowledge God, and there's more ways. He then talks to them about a very specific thing at their time. He starts talking to them about idols. In verse 4, therefore, concerning the eating of things offered to idols, we know, this is in our knowledge, we know that an idol is nothing in this world, and there is no other God but one. Here Paul is giving standard monotheism answer to anything that we call polytheism, paganism. There is one God. This is the knowledge that Paul starts with. The knowledge that here is the one. There is only one God. So anything else that gives any claim to being a God is an idol. It is somehow limited. Anything else in the world. And then even go further, any so-called God in verse 5. For even if there are so-called gods, here you hear the sarcasm. So-called. If there are any so-called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, that's interesting. Most of the time, when we talk about the gods, what are we talking about? Talk about the heavens. But here, Paul says, even if there are any gods on the earth, some religions, as Paul pointed out, would say the gods who walk among us. But there are plenty of times in human existence we make our own gods out of things here on earth. We know from our archaeology people worship trees. People have worshipped statues. They have worshipped things on this earth. We know from our own modern times that people can venerate other powerful people. This is not a new thing. This didn't come up in the 21st century. People have venerated other humans for a long time. The people that Paul was in writing to Corinth. Corinth had been destroyed in 149 BC. Caesar Augustus rebuilt the town. The city of Corinth, at the time that Paul was writing to it, would have annual festivals in honor of Caesar. This is not God of the heavens. This is not some common spirit. They were giving veneration to here Paul says, whether in heaven or on earth, any so-called God. I want to quote someone from 500 years ago. I think it's helpful to quote people from this time period, give us some good historical perspective. For not only the adoration of images is idolatry, but also trust in one's own righteousness, works, and merit. And putting confidence and riches in human power. The people that Paul was writing to in Corinth, that was happening. They were putting trust in the emperors of Rome. There are people this day who put their trust in other human beings, other human organizations. How godless do you think it is to rely on these things omnipotent God. Not me. Pointing out, hopefully is a reminder for us that even though we can look in the ancient world and say, oh look, these ignorant heathens were worshiping this rock or worshiping this tree, how foolish they were, how silly they were. It's probably too natural. What about our own things today? Where instead of worshiping the Creator, we venerate people, systems, and organizations, and stand on our side. The idols that Paul is talking about then is something important to the church of Corinth. But I would point out that there are plenty of us who wrestle with idols to this day. The whole notion of knowing nothing is nothing to what we have. Our Lord wants us to have knowledge and wants our knowledge to grow with Him. Not for us to know nothing, but to know Him more fully. Now, it's time as we continue to go through the rest of this chapter about what we know about liberty. It is written. Beware, Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 8:9, beware lest this liberty of yours become a stumbling block. Earlier we talked about building materials. How love is supposed to be our foundation. How God's love for us is what makes us known. We talked about laying a good solid foundation. And now he talks about a stumbling block. Everyone see the construction picture here. If you were to go on a construction site in this country, there are certain rules in place when you go to a construction site. What are some of those rules?
Hard hat.
Hard hat. What are hard hat? What? Steel toe boots. Oh, hard hat and steel toe boots. This is for things that fall on you. When you look at OSHA's death statistics, OSHA will track how many people die every year in this country from work accidents. Falling at construction sites is third highest. Followed by workplace harm. So when there's a construction site, wear the hard hat. Because at a construction site, when things are being put together, things can fall. Someone working on the third story is using a tool. Whoops, drop the tool. Doesn't hurt them, but someone 3 stories down, it's an issue. Someone 3 stories up is doing drilling. Pieces are flying, those are falling. Again, not necessarily hurting the person doing the drilling, but someone down below is wood. Someone has a nail gun. Oh, one of the nails missed. And the nail goes flying. Again, the person right there hopefully is affected by it. And it falls into someone. So no stumbling blocks. Put this in the context of construction. If you're already built, no construction. How many of you are complete? None of you? You're under construction. That whole word earlier about, yes, you got some knowledge, but God still builds. Well, guess what? Your life is going to be a little rough right now. You're not done. The temple isn't finished. God's still working on you. You have stumbling blocks. I have stumbling blocks. I have some things that aren't quite OSHA code yet. But God's still working on you. So Paul tells us, as you're learning, please be careful with the knowledge you're learning. Don't use it as a stumbling block for someone else. Don't use it as a stumbling block for you either. But be aware that God's still putting it in the right spot. Now, is it because God is somehow limited or God's on his short? God's working on people. He's trying not to please you. He's putting it in gently. Beware lest this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to those who are weak. You are filled with stumbling blocks. I am filled with pieces that haven't been quite put in you. God's still working on it. Don't use them as weapons on someone else. We keep going. Verse 10. From anyone who says knowledge, he who sees you who has knowledge being an idle temple will not their conscience. And you're going to be molded. Now in verse 11, talking about your knowledge. Because of your knowledge,